Ready? We'll now call this meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Alpart?
Here.
Ms. Bagley? Here. Ms. Bailey? Here. Mr. Banks? Ms. Bonke?
Here.
Ms. Franklin?
Here.
Ms. Gary? Ms. Garvey?
Here.
Ms. Hayes? Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Ms. Lawson? Mr. McLaughlin? Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Stork?
Here.
And Mr. Walkinshaw?
Here.
And Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. We'll now turn it over to Rich Dalton for a safety briefing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick assignments here. While we're in the room, just as a reminder, we do have two evacuation routes out of this room. Primary route's going to be through the double wooden doors in the back there. We'll head towards the elevator bank. We won't take the elevator. We'll take the stairs going down. That'll pop us out on the first floor, and then we'll just follow our way out through the directed by the exit signs there. So in the event that we do need first responders in this room, I've got Luca there in the back will be the primary 911 caller. And I've got, let's see, Stephen in the back. He'll be the runner to go out and make sure that we got people that know their way up to the room. Mr. Duque will be our primary AED CPR, and we do have some backups assigned. Mark in the back will be backup AED CPR, and I'll take backup 911 call. So that is my safety moment, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Mr. Dalton? Okay, we'll now move into item 4, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to the agenda?
Approval agenda.
Moved by Mr. Kelly. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now move for approval of the minutes from the June 17th VRE meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Bailey, seconded by Ms. Bonke. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Now turn to chair's comments. Welcome to the July VRE Operations Board meeting. A lot going on today. Immediately following the conclusion of this meeting, the CEO and Legal Counsel Evaluation Committee will meet. We will also have our 30th anniversary reception after the meeting today. When we adjourn, if you are not participating in the committee meeting, we're going to take about a 10-minute break as we get things organized for the reception. Please feel free to get up and stretch your legs and check your messages. Staff will let us know when food is ready, and we'll make our way over to outside of the rear and take a right, and you'll see the food kind of in the outside area there. We'll give you a chance to enjoy the food and watch our slideshow with some great photos from VRE's history. And hopefully all of you all can stay because I think you're in for a real treat. So with that, I will now turn it over to item 7 for Mr. Dalton's CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Go through a few topics here. Did want to, on the safety topic, did want to point out that this past month, our security sensitive employees, including mechanical and transportation staff, completed TSA security training. The purpose of this training is to improve and sustain the preparedness of our staff, including critical capability to observe, assess, and of course, report security risks and potential security breaches in our unique operating environment. Also this past month, and it was not necessarily planned, it was more coincidental, but the TSA did actually do an audit on our training program and took no exceptions to that, to to our current program. So that was definitely a good accomplishment for us. Moving on time performance system-wide for the month was 87%. We still had a few at the beginning of the month. We still had a few lingering operational, I'll just say operational issues as it related from the Manassas line tie and surfacing work that occurred or was completed towards the end of May. And then as we went into June, we did have some, well, just frankly, some weather-related issues out there. And as most of you know, when we see very strong weather patterns and stuff like that, similar to you driving up and down the interstate or secondary roads, we just slow down. So that caused a few delayed trains as well. Ridership for the month just tipped over 110,000 for the month of June. I previously reported that is our highest total ridership month since February of 2020. And of course, as you can see from the graph, we continue to tick up. The month of July is behaving similar to June, so we'll see where those numbers and the average daily ridership, which again kind of normalizes ridership out due to the variability in number of service days per month, finally crested over 5,000 average daily riders. As promised last month, I just wanted to give you just a little sneak peek at some of the results of our customer survey that was conducted on March 25th. Some or most of you around the table through another process received what is the scorecard portion, or should have received the scorecard portion of the customer survey. We are prepared to come back in September, as we would normally do, and give you more expansive briefing. That includes just being able to pick out some of the dominant comments that are written in the survey and demographic type stuff. But I just wanted to show you this real quick, as I promised, that particularly over those three major categories: overall communication with passengers, overall crew performance, and just overall service quality, substantial improvements since the last time we took the survey, which was in 2019. So again, somewhat of a teaser for September. When we come back in September, we'll go over these in a little bit more detail, and with some, as we've picked out some opportunities for improvements and how we're gonna move forward with that. So I want to point out a couple of new staff members. We have first Holly Cockrell in the back there. Holly has came on board as a human resources consultant for us, and she's just come in to help us out with just various HR tasks along the lines of developing and enhancing different programs within the HR division. So we wanted to welcome her aboard. And then we have Miss Lauren Hill in the back. She came on board recently and joined our mechanical operations team as administrative and purchasing specialist. A little secret there is that Lauren was a long tenured OmniRide employee, and so she spent about 13 years with OmniRide and then came over to VRE. So we like to think that we've kept her in the family, and so just glad to have her on board. I do want to point out also that, yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
No, he smiled. He was all right.
Go for it. We love our arms.
Absolutely.
I'll go help fix British. We kid.
And then just moving on, I want to try to keep this concise, but I do have a couple of things I wanted to bring up. This past Wednesday, we did meet the management at the current Crystal City Station. And I just wanted to say our passengers and staff really appreciated Councilmember Bagley's participation Next week, we'll be at the Alexandria Station, Wednesday, July 20th. And this will also be the date that we commemorate the 30th year anniversary of our first Fredericksburg line train. And then it's not in the room, but I did want to thank Supervisor Gary for spending the day with us, staff, and on June 24th, we did a system tour and just, it was a long day. It was a warm day. And, but I also use that as a plug if anyone is still, anyone interested in a system tour, I'll ask them to contact Joe. And then I do have a couple other just quick topics, Madam Chair, that are, I did have a couple of inquiries about national rail labor issues. And if some of you, I believe, have been following, over the past couple of years, there's been national negotiations between the national rail carriers and labor unions. This has been going on for about 2 years. And recently, through the mediation process, both sides were unsuccessful at reaching a conclusion with their agreements. They entered into a 30-day cooling off period. That 30-day cooling off period ends Monday. All sources, I'll just say all sources, everybody that we talked to, and even it's been publicly stated that the intention is for the president to initiate a presidential emergency board, which is part of this process. But frankly, they have till Sunday to do that. Worst case, if that doesn't happen, then of course the national rail carriers can strike, and it would affect VRE. If not directly, of course, we don't have, Keolis has some of their staff under some collective bargaining agreements that would be affected, but our major concern would be the host railroads, the ability to dispatch trains and do that type of stuff. Don't want to be an alarmist here, but I know some of you had asked some questions there. We're watching this, have been watching this closely, and I will make a point that if something does break over the weekend, I'll send you a note. So keep you informed of that. The other thing that I did want to bring up from a timeliness standpoint, the District of Columbia enacted a Rail Safety and Security Emergency Act in 2016, effectively to stand up, which is equivalent to state agencies for oversight of railroads. For example, the Commonwealth of Virginia through the SEC has a similar oversight function. And so the District of Columbia established that, and they had recently put out some proposed regulations on how to fund it. And one of the ways that they have proposed to fund it is to tax rail carriers on a per unit, basically on a by car basis, if you will. So what they've proposed is for every car entering the district, there's a 75-cent tax. For every car exiting the district is a 75-cent tax. For commuter railroads, they propose that it's just basically 75 cents per rail car coming in and out. Okay, so we've looked at this. This just came to us here probably within the last week. We've looked at this. I'm collaborating with obviously the other railroad carriers, and I'll just say, from my professional opinion, from the oversight perspective, that's not necessarily an issue for us. If we'll welcome anybody that wants to come in and take a look at how we're doing things. But there is some discussion about truly the district's ability to be able to tax on a per rail car basis, frankly. So, and Steve has looked at this. Like I said, had discussions yesterday with CSX, and so I just want to let you know that we may, as a staff, formulate some comments, some reaction to that to the district, and of course I'll be happy to share that with you when we do that. So.
In regards to the DC legislation, kind of perplexed by the rationale because we've got a strong argument here that we're bringing a lot of workers into DC that are spending money and also they're relieving the DC roads of their congestion. Have we made that argument to them?
Those are the types of comments that we have been compiling, if you will, that we would be able to provide that in a direct comment. I did want to say though, just on our current operating or service level, the financial impact to us is about $20,000 annually. So I just want to make sure everybody has that number in your head. But obviously we're looking to expand, so that's only going to get greater, not less. So, but absolutely. And some of my discussions with other passenger carriers have expressed the same thing. So
Do you have additional things on your report?
that is it,
Okay,
Madam
alright.
Chair.
Mr. Kelly?
More fundamental question than that is, we are so regulated for safety at the federal level, it's beyond belief. What exactly is the District of Columbia thinking they're trying to do? And they don't have the personnel to do this.
So specifically to answer your question, and similar to other state entities that implement these oversight functions, what they do is they enter into MOUs with the Federal Railroad Administration, and the Federal Railroad Administration trains their employees.
So this is feel-good legislation, looks like we're trying to do something, basically. Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, can you also just talk about, kind of the delay in service on, I think it was Tuesday maybe, for Manassas Park?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we had on Manassas Line Train 326 encountered as it approached and stopped at the Manassas Park Station, encountered a mechanical delay or a mechanical issue. We did some troubleshooting. And, but quickly, as typical with our protocols for those types of en route service delays is, the train behind it, we positioned the train behind it to couple up to it and then actually treated two trains as one effectively and sent that on its way to DC where we were able to effect a repair. But, I will say, it doesn't happen often, but we do have pretty much a standard protocol for doing that. We try to manage what we internally refer to as mechanical optimism. In other words, I'll just leave it there for a couple minutes. We'll get it fixed. We have an operating plan that keeps the network fluid. So, but yes, that was unfortunate. It doesn't happen too often to us, but again, all involved, we did that safely. So.
Yep. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Dalton?
Just one comment, because I've been looking, having taken that trip to Germany and gotten stuck there. Trains are great there and they're subsidized. The cost is low. And I'm just struck by the fact that DC, here in this country, don't subsidize transit. We try to charge them more. It's kind of nuts. Just, I don't know. I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I had to say it. Thank you.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's fine.
Do you have a question? Comment? Yes.
Oh, I didn't know. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, mine is very simple, to welcome the new members to the team. It's good to be multi-faceted, as you can plainly see. Welcome aboard, look forward to working with you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, we will move on to item 8, public comment time. VRE accepts public comments both in person and electronically via the VRE website. Members of the public wishing to make public comments have 3 minutes and should state their full name and the jurisdiction they live in. And written comments submitted before 8 a.m. this morning will be forwarded to the members of the board, read into the minutes, and attached to the official minutes. Do we have any members of the public here who would like to address the board? Madam Clerk, do we have any electronically submitted comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one from Mr. Mustafa Hoffs of Fairfax County. He states, it does not make sense to expand parking in Manassas Park when the parking which is utilized is almost 10 or 20% at max. In fact, VRE should look to close parking spaces and sell it to build transit-oriented multifamily mixed development like WMATA is doing in Northern Virginia. I want to use VRE because I go to Fredericksburg at 4 p.m. and leave at 7 p.m. I cannot because you do not have service both ways and it is very limited. Your ridership will increase if you add all day and night service, both ways, and also weekend service. That concludes his comments.
That, to address that?
Just the latter part of the comment, of course, transforming rail in Virginia goes a long way to adding additional service, bidirectional. Eventually, back to I guess specifically about parking capacity at Manassas Park. I mean, we've actually seen days now because of ridership coming back in the existing surface parking lot. There's some days in the peak of the week, it's back at 40 to 45% capacity. Also, the expanded parking that we're doing at Manassas Park is integrated into a larger development by the city of Manassas Park, somewhat akin to a transit oriented development as well. So I think we're headed that way. The other piece about selling off parking lots and converting them. I know those are a couple of elements. I know that the team that's updating our system plan is looking at, if there's some opportunities like that for us as well. So that'll be forthcoming as part of the system plan update.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
All right. We will move now to action 9, or item 9, or action items. First, 9A, to recommend approval of the revised VRE Operations Board electronic participation policy. Rich, do you want to give an overview?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just like the next action items, because of what we have going on here, I'm going to be very concise. So if I miss some things, please feel free to ask questions. But this 9A is we're just seeking a recommendation to the commissions to revise our electronic participation policy simply to reflect Virginia Code amendments that go into effect September 1, 2022. That are changes or amendments to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. So we're simply trying to update our electronic policy. And of course, with VRE being a committee, technically of parent commissions, this will need to go to the commissions as well. So that's my summary now.
Sure, and I'd just like to say as a reminder, our former chair, Elizabeth Bennett Parker, who's now in the General Assembly, she was very instrumental in kind of introducing this item and pushing it forward. So just wanted to give that context and background. But is there a motion to move this forward?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Bagley, seconded by Supervisor Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll now move into action item 9B, Operations Board charge to nominating committee regarding subordinate officers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This came to you as an information item last month. And so I know there were some conversations, particularly from the bylaws committee. So you've seen this before, and glad to go over any of the details or anything that you want. But
Maybe an overview, just what it is.
so yes, this is essentially the charge. So it's essentially a charge letter that the bylaws committee effectively, after they met a couple of times, didn't think that there was a need, at least right now, to change the bylaws as it relates to appointment of executive committee members. But recommended that a charge letter to the upcoming and potentially future nominating committees just acknowledge the fact that the nominating committee should recognize the potential for subordinate executive committee members as it relates to maintaining somewhat of a balance relative to ridership across the entire executive committee.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So move approval of action item 9B.
Moved by Mr. Walkinshaw. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Alcorn. Any discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say as a nominating committee chair, I'm in support of this, that it's a little bit complicated and the bylaws committee talked about all the possible iterations and making it more specific direction became problematic. But I think the big message here, I would want everybody, we just need to communicate and make sure that everybody's on board. So.
Ms. Fontaine?
Yeah, just for the record, I appreciate all the conversation that we had regarding this. I thought it was good, it was healthy, and obviously Steve was integral to that. And just look forward to this kind of going into effect, if you will, and because it's not in the bylaws, so it's something that will have to be considered by the board. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just appreciate all the bylaws committee members who worked on this, Mr. Kelly for helping to surface it. I mean, just important to note that, so we have, you don't see it now, but we have 5 executive committee members in the bylaws, one being the past chair, who obviously is no longer part of the operations board, but the bylaws also give the opportunity for subordinate officers, not the best term maybe, but additional, that's what it says, additional officers on the executive committee. And I think what we recognize is that can be a tool when the nominating committee deems it necessary to help achieve balance on the executive committee. And the letter or the charge to the nominating committee lays out 3 types of balance between the 2 commissions, a jurisdictional and / ridership balance, so that jurisdictions with significant ridership have representation, and the balance of all the jurisdictions and the citizens in those jurisdictions. So it gives the nominating committee flexibility year by year to make the decisions that they feel is right in terms of the balance of the executive.
Yeah, and I will say, I think, obviously there was a great deal of discussion around fairness with regards to representation. And I think this is a good compromise to that discussion. So hopefully next year or later this year, when we're making that decision about a slate, those factors will be taken into consideration. So just want to point that out as well. Supervisor Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for a point of clarity and for a point of balance, I like the word that you use, Supervisor Walkinshaw. This will be based upon the recommendation of the committee, or correct, in terms of the balance piece, or recommendation of the executive committee is what I'm saying.
Well, and I believe in practice, it actually would come out of the nominating committee.
Okay,
Yeah, that,
just point of clarity.
yeah, so it puts a little more on the nominating committee.
Okay.
I'm sure that it's.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
We had a motion.
We did all of that. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll now move into 9C, authorization to offer fare-free travel to all riders in September 2022 and fare-free travel in October 2022 between zones 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Dalton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're seeking authorization for the Chief Executive Officer to offer free travel to all VRE riders, as stated in the title, in September of 2022 and fare free between zone 1, 2, and 3. just in summary, again, this was an information item. We had very good discussion last meeting. And from that, in addition to the free fair concept and stuff, there was a lot of discussion about being able to, the importance of being able to gather some data, and so the team took that back. We have some plans to be able to do that, not only just gather data, but also from a messaging and communication standpoint. So I wanted to get that in just from a follow-up from that discussion. But essentially, this will be, the purpose of this is to serve several purposes. And one point that was made during the last meeting was this is purely promotional, particularly the Fair Free September, and this is multi-prong. Is to show appreciation to to our core group of riders that has stuck with us the last couple of years. It's also to promote VRE service, attract new riders, and of course to support the region's transportation network as it relates to the scheduled shutdown of Metro Rail. Point out that there is, particularly in the fiscal impact piece, I just wanted to state that we didn't change anything there. We think that's still a sound estimate, if you will, in terms of the foregone fare revenue in that 1.2 million to 2.3 million range, depending on where the ridership is at. And then just to remind everybody that, of course, that loss of fare revenue, our pandemic relief funds, we plan to use that as a backstop. The other piece to that is, as stated before, is particularly with the fare-free travel between zones 1, 2, and 3 into the month of October. We do plan to apply to DRPT for some funds to get to recover some of that lost fare revenue as well. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Okay, any questions about this item? Yes.
How much are we planning to promote this, advertise it, let people know? I'm just curious, and then I had one follow-up question. How much are we planning to sort of promote it? I can't remember what you said a month ago.
We have a full campaign, if you will, and it's multi-pronged. It's e-marketing. It's specific physical placements of marketing type tools. So we have a full messaging campaign, communication campaign, and that would start in the month of August, actually. And so that campaign is planned to be, cast a very wide net across our entire service region, including points south of our service region. And then, of course, as I mentioned, part of that too is, and we have a couple of processes that we're working on. We want to be able to get data on board the trains from new riders, okay? And find out, are you a new rider? Are you riding us just because it's free, or are you really? So we do have some plans, and again, if this is approved, then we'll finalize all of those. But we're going to cast a very wide net, and then of course, as we get into October, of course, a lot, the messaging and communication does narrow down just a little bit, just because we are trying to also provide an alternative for those Metro riders that during the shutdown there as well. So
I think it's great. I think it's a way of making lemonade out of lemons. One question: any chance that you might sometime get more riders than you actually have room for on the train?
I love that problem.
I know we would. Just throwing that out as a possibility, because you'd want to treat them well, have those cookies, right?
Exactly. Just from a operational standpoint, that's something that we do plan on going out and ahead of September, staying ahead of the demand. I plan on lengthening some trains and using some of the metrics that we have now, just because I would prefer to stay ahead of that demand, let people still have some space if needed. And so, and then we are going to remain nimble throughout the month of September and of course in October. So if we have to adjust those consist sizes, then we'll do that as well. So, and if you get an email from me that says we maxed out, we couldn't handle anymore, then
Back emojis with
we
fireworks.
will, so anyways, that,
No, thank you. One doesn't usually think of trains as being nimble. It's great.
yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Brinkman. Would you mind just giving us a practical description of how this will work? Like, will tickets be purchased but have no cost, or will people just be able to step on the train and no conductor will ask them for a ticket?
People will be able to step on the train and have no ticket.
And does that impact our ability to track daily ridership or any other data?
So the conductors do a manual check right now, okay? And they do a manual check in both directions at the max load point. And so sometimes that varies from the ticket check. So now what the conductors are gonna do, and we're gonna actually put some additional conductors off the extra board on these trains. They are the ones that are gonna be, they are our front line. They are our frontline ambassadors. And so they're gonna be, instead of checking tickets, they're gonna be seeking out new riders. And they will have the ability, they will be carrying the ability for a new rider to be able to, through a QR code and or a card that's handed to them to give us some information. Why are you riding? And so on and so forth. So that's the one part of it. Does that, did that answer your question? Okay, yeah.
If it, since we're not having that electronic interaction, how we'll track things, but that's great.
And and I will say too, we do have an automatic passenger counting system on board the train, albeit it's not certified yet to track for NTD purposes. It's not certified. We're waiting for ridership to get back up, but we'll also be looking at that technology, and that at least tells us from a loading perspective where people are getting on, people are getting off. And we'll be able to actually look at that on a daily basis. That's actually going to help us make sure that we have the right consist links out there on a given train set or even on a given line.
Is it? Yep. Supervisor Bailey.
I understand yet, don't worry about it. This is very timely and because there has been, and I know in my area, some inquiry about it. So it's very timely. So thank you so much for, again, being on the forefront. The other piece that I wanted to ask was, is there an increased provision, may not be, for security as it relates to this at all? May not be, but it just came to my mind in terms of, just increased security.
Sure.
Given the climate that we're in.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just I'm sure most of you are aware. If you're not, we do have an undercover law enforcement program on board our trains. And in parallel, we've actually been bringing on additional participants in that program. So we will continue to have presence on board the train as it relates to that. Of course, we have physical people on board the trains in the form of conductors that are trained in several different areas of de-escalating situations and stuff like that. And of course, we have all of our jurisdictional partners that are out there that can help us at any given, station platform and in the event that we're having some issues out there. So.
Okay, we'll take one more and then get to the motion. Mr. Preston.
Just to follow up Board Member Bagley's point question. Which I've seen, as I ride the train, so I've seen the manual check, the ticket check. And so they're checking it at zone 3, going in, let's say you're going northbound into DC. Well, you need to hire additional crew just in case, because that's a lot of work, because they're limiting the trains, adding more cars. There's going to be more people, and they have to do this additional step for the new riders. We have to hire, or not hire, but add on additional crew to do this.
I don't believe so, but we are, as far as not hire, but that's what we're doing we're analyzing, there's certain trains that we think that are going to be you know, we predicted are gonna be busier than others. I mean, 3:30, you know, right? It's an example. So we currently have two conductors on there, likely to lengthen that train and add a third conductor. So for example, there, okay? And we do have conductors that are sitting on the bench in the form of an extra board and stuff, and we'll bring them back on.
Okay, because it gotta go upstairs too, that takes time as well.
Yeah, but again, they're not checking, remember, they're not checking tickets, they'll still count. But what we're trying to do is seek out, and we'll, you know, as a regular rider, you're probably gonna get sick of this message, but we're gonna be on the PA systems and stuff like that, asking riders as the conductors come through, please, you know, we'd like to make contact with you.
Is there a motion for item 9C?
Move, Madam Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Bailey, seconded by Ms. Gary. Any discussion?
Chair,
Yes.
sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but I do have one question. Rich, what is our goal for, I know that Supervisor Gardy is very optimistic and I like her optimism. But what is do we have a set goal of what we'd like to see ridership for the month of September? You're at 110,000 right now?
That is correct.
What do we call it? A great free campaign?
Actually, what I call a great free campaign isn't gonna come until November, December. You know, so if we can see something in the neighborhood of at least being pretty conservative, but like a 15 to 20% bump, I would say that's pretty successful. Right?
Okay.
Given whatever else is going on. Now, if there's something else outside of our control, right? So I just like to.
We can't predict that.
Exactly.
But-
So I predict what we're gonna see is we're gonna see an increase in September and we're gonna see a
Okay.
bump in
So the goal
October,
is
but
not
it's really
2%,
about,
but 15 to 20.
but
And I
it's
get
about
it's
where
gonna
it
take time.
settles out.
Right.
And, but we'll be able to tell also because, you know, particularly going back to, if we can make as much contact as possible with new riders and stuff. And then if we can trace them through getting a VRE mobile account set up, getting benefits assigned to them, that's gonna tell us, that's gonna give us some information
Sure.
almost immediately on what we can project. But I say all of that, but then, you know, if something else in this environment happens that sort of, you know, curtails that, but nonetheless, it's been said in this room before, but, all things being equal, when you get on VRE, and if you haven't ridden it before, chances are if you can make VRE work within your schedules and stuff like that, you're likely to stay.
Well, in the September board meeting, it'll be halfway through the month, so you'll be able to tell us how it's going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we're all politicians. We know things change on. No matter how much you might try.
Wanted to put in that told us.
But
Hey, we're good.
And I will say, I'm not used to this much experimentation and I think it's great. I mean, this is a big, it's a big thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think what I'll just say is this is obviously promotional for VRE, but also to help get ridership up. I mean, obviously, we've had a challenge because of the pandemic. And so this is a way to hopefully not only bring in those riders who maybe haven't been here since before the pandemic, but also new ridership, as Mr. Dalton mentioned, to maybe check out, experiment the VRE. Hopefully it works for the schedule. I remember when I used to take VRE, very efficient, very easy. And so if other people can experience that same, that same kind of commute, then we're pretty confident that they will stay and come back and hopefully tell others. So we'll see how it goes. See, we have a motion, we're in discussion, any other discussion?
I'd like
Yes.
to one more thing. I just want to, I've been really intentional in picking this apart, listening to what our revenues are going to be. And I think this is a very good promotional strategy because if normally with marketing, I mean, you throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, you know this, right? Like maybe that's going to go, maybe that's going to go. But we're not doing pay per view or pay per click or pay per phone call or pay per email. This is getting people actually on the train. And then we're only paying up to the cap of the revenue loss of what we're already getting. So I think it's a good, strong campaign.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll now move into item 9D, authorization to execute a contract for construction of Fredericksburg Station rehabilitation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're seeking authorization to execute a contract with Clark Construction Group of Bethesda, Maryland for construction of the Fredericksburg Station rehabilitation in amount stated in the resolution plus a contingency for a total amount not to exceed $8,710,439. Before I start, this has been a long time coming to get to this point, okay? And there are some of you sitting around the table, bless you, and some from a staff perspective. This is a rehabilitation project, but a very I'll just say, just very technically complex rehabilitation project. It is, and it's not just a station. And for those that are familiar with the Fredericksburg Station, this isn't just a station, but it's a bridge. It's a railroad bridge that a station is incorporated into. So I just, on the onset, just want to, just acknowledge that it's taken us a while to get here. But so from a project standpoint, once again, this is, it's a rehabilitation project. There's a lot of what we refer to as dental concrete work that needs to be done at the station. There are some previously used platform edges or ends on this station platform that need to be rehabilitated, so we could actually platform more cars. And that's not just VRE, that's Amtrak as well. And several other things going on. There's a major safety component that's going into the station where we're going to add stairs to the west side platform on the south end that will eventually eliminate the need for passengers to cross a very busy road. It pops them, in fact, takes them completely away from it. Not that they can't, but it does minimize that safety issue. So, I do also want to say that it mixed in between putting all this together, of course, with Transforming Rail in Virginia, there was a change in partial ownership across this right of way and at this station there. So it's just been an effort to get it to this point. I mean that in a good way. So just glad to be at this point here, Madam Chair.
Yep.
So moved.
Okay.
Moved by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Supervisor Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll now move into item 9E, authorization to execute a contract for construction management services for the Manassas Park Parking Expansion Project. Mr. Belton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Equally a labor of love here. Great project for us. We're seeking authorization to execute a contract with Gannett Fleming of Fairfax, Virginia for construction management services for the Manassas Park Parking Expansion Project in the amount stated in the resolution plus a contingency for a total amount not to exceed $3,554,253. And I know we brought a lot of action items on the Manassas Park Station here the last several months. And so we're sort of nearing the, nearing the peak here. And this is an important part of that. What the construction management services will do for us is obviously it provides a dedicated resource to manage the oversight of construction as we implement various elements of this. There's a parking garage, there's an overhead pedestrian crossing, there's a couple of elevator towers, so on and so forth. I will note also, we will soon be soliciting for construction, and it's always good to bring our construction management services on board slightly ahead of that so they can review our bid packages and get them integrated in the construction project before we let that for solicitation. So you've already given us authorization to go do that solicitation. So I really hope to be coming back to you September at the soonest, October-ish, maybe, to award that construction contract. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Sure. There a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Banks. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Bomke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now moving to 10, information items, Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is probably what everybody showed up for today is have a discussion about 2024 key budget issues. And I know some of you in your individual jurisdictions, you're probably sitting here going, wait a minute, we just got done doing that in our individual jurisdictions. But as you know, in order to be on time, we need to start early. So the finance committee met last month and went through some of basically these same key budget issues and had discussions. So Mr. Schofield, I'll tell you, Mr. Schofield, you got really, really ugly there over time. That's the wrong, well, anyway, hopefully. Sorry, sir. But nonetheless, Mr. Schofield, you should have a clicker on your end. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, sir, and to lead this discussion.
All right. Thank you, Rich, and good morning, Madam Chair and board members. As Rich indicated, yeah, we did have a really good discussion last month about some of these issues that we're looking at for fiscal 24. So now we want to expand that discussion and bring it to the whole group. I'm going to cover about a half a dozen key issues here, try to hit each of them briefly, really just try to whet your appetite, and then just open it up for discussion and questions. Before I do that, some of you have been here for a while. Some of you are new. Just to remind you about how the budget process goes. We come before you now in July to talk about the key issues that we're looking at for the upcoming fiscal year. Don't have a meeting in August. I'll come back to you in September with the preliminary budget. That will then get recommended on to the commissions for their review. We have October and November then to have either discussions here at the board level or at the committee level about more the nitty gritty of the budget. And then we come back to you in December with the proposed, with the final budget, which then gets recommended to the commissions for their action in January. So we are at the beginning of the process. So I've sort of divided these issues into sort of two major buckets. One of them I'm calling the macroeconomic bucket. And these are the things that we don't really have any direct control over, but that we have to plan for, we have to accommodate, we have to mitigate within the budget process. And then the other bucket is what I'm calling the policy decisions. And so those are the things that together, us as staff and you as the board, that we need to decide how to proceed in terms of doing the budget for 24. So in terms of the macroeconomic ones, at its most basic level, of course, budgeting is about revenues and expenses, and making sure that all of our projected expenses are covered by reasonably expected revenues. And on the expense side, we are going to have to be managing VRE's costs in an environment of significant cost inflation. You may have heard about this on the news. You may have experienced it in your own household budget. The inflation that we are seeing is impacting both the operations and the capital budgets for VRE. It's everything from diesel fuel to parts, to the contracts we have with Keolis, the contracts we have with our host railroads, and of course, the cost of our capital projects. And actually re-looking at and resetting the cost of our capital projects within the capital improvement program is actually going to be one of the major things that we do during the budget process this year. So then on the other side of the ledger, of course, we have the revenues. We will continue to rely on those pandemic relief monies as needed. But of course, we're hoping to continue to transition back to more of a normal and a long-term sustainable business model as ridership returns. The key issue in terms of trying to project passenger revenue, that remains a major challenge, especially since we're trying to look maybe 12 to 18 months beyond from now. We actually ended fiscal 22 last month, almost spot on for passenger revenue, but I don't want to take a whole lot of credit for that. That was a little bit of skill and a little bit of luck. We're already into 23, and so really the question now is how are we doing with our projections for 23? As Rich has mentioned a number of times, we are engaging in a lot of robust marketing and outreach to try to attract both new and returning riders. But there are decisions out of our control by the federal government, by the other employers, that are also going to obviously have a major impact on the total level of ridership that we're able to achieve. Also on the revenue side, we're going to have to incorporate changes that are coming to both the state and the federal revenues that we rely on. On the state side, we need to keep an eye on the TISDAC process and how that may impact the amount of state operating assistance that we get in 24. And then on the federal half of the equation, we will need to incorporate that increase, approximately 3% increase in the formula funding that we expect to get, incorporate that into the 6-year CIP. So those are the big sort of macroeconomic issues that we're going to be wrestling with over the next couple months. So now we shift over to the policy decisions. And again, these are the ones that we're going to have to wrestle with and make choices directly about. I have 4 of them listed here. More are likely to arise over the course of the budget process, but these are the big ones. The first one is the allocation of the jurisdictional contribution and how that relates to the survey, the ridership survey. As we've noted a couple times, the last master agreement ridership survey that we did was conducted in October of 2019. And we have used those results over our last 3 budgets. We will be doing a new survey this fall. We intend to have preliminary results ready for discussion at the November board meeting so that we're not just bringing it to you right at the end for the adoption in December. These results may be materially different than the ridership results that we've had in years past. That would have the effect of changing not only the allocation of the jurisdictional contribution, but even the makeup of the operations board itself. What we are seeing right now, though, of course, this is at a lower total level of ridership. What we're seeing right now is proportionally more riders taking longer distance trips coming from places like Spotsy and Stafford and Fredericksburg. That may moderate a bit as we get into August and September and more employees returning to work, but we will just have to wait and see what the results tell us. So that's the first one. If the survey tells us how we're going to cut up the pie for the jurisdictional contribution, we also have to determine how big that pie is going to be in fiscal 24. We were able to use those pandemic relief monies in both the 22 and 23 budgets to provide relief to the jurisdictions. But what we need to sort of jointly determine now is what is a sustainable sort of post-pandemic path for the city that balances both VRE's needs and then what the jurisdiction's capacity is to fund it. The third issue is passenger fares. As you recall, our sort of pre-pandemic approach had been to increase the fares and the jurisdictional contribution in alternating years, which generally kept those increases modest and easy to plan for. The pandemic, of course, turned that all sideways. And so we need to begin thinking about passenger fares. My personal view is that we should not be thinking about lowering the fares, at least not at this point, that would leave money on the table. And that right now, when we're trying to attract riders back, that what riders are choosing VRE based on issues more around convenience, reliability, the quality of the service, as opposed to the level of the fare. On the flip side, I'm sort of 2 minds about raising fares. Ultimately, I think in an environment, again, where we're trying to, make a pitch to riders, that's not kind of the environment that I want to hold a public hearing in to raise fares. But at the same time, in this environment, as we said, when the cost of everything is going up, including the cost of, putting VRE out there on the rails, it would be understandable to look at a fare increase. I think if we don't do it for fiscal 24, I do think we have to be prepared to do it maybe the year after that. But again, I would, when we get to the end, I would very much encourage your feedback on that, please. Then the last question has to do with recovery from the fare box. So the master agreement does require that we budget half of our operating expenses to be covered from passenger fares. We have waived that constraint over the past two budgets, the 22 and 23 budgets, as a result of the pandemic. I think even if we have a relatively robust recovery in ridership over the next 12 to 18 months, let's say, we still will likely come in below that 50% mark. So I would recommend, again, that we consider waiving that requirement for 24, but that we also begin to think more strategically about how to maintain the spirit of that requirement in the new environment that we're in. And what I mean there is a really key part of our strategic plan, a really key part of TRV, is for VRE to begin providing reverse commute, off-peak, weekend, all of these different types of services. And that 50% requirement, which is really a product of peak hour, peak direction commute type revenue, just may not be consistent with what we're trying to put out there in the future. So again, I think that's not a decision we have to make today, but that's more of a strategic discussion that we need to begin to have. So there you go. With that, Madam Chair, I would be happy to have a discussion.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Schofield? Mr. Walkinshaw?
Other than, Ms. Bumke led a great conversation at our finance committee meeting in June, and had a good conversation around some of these issues. I mean, I'll just share my personal thoughts and reactions. I think it's important that, and I think we've had this conversation over the last couple of years, that it's time to get back to the survey and making adjustments that the survey indicates, both in terms of subsidy and board membership potentially. I also think that we need to, it's difficult for all of us in our jurisdictions right now, but we need to bite the bullet and get back to paying the full subsidies. I don't think it's going to be easier if we continue to delay it. We're in this situation right now where we're fortunate to have the federal dollars that we have. As our fiscal clock is ticking, and it ticks faster if we don't get back on track. In terms of fares, I mean, it's a hard one, because the reality is leaving fares as they are is a de facto reduction in fares given the inflation. However, I think my view is it would send the wrong signal right now to do that, given what we're trying to do in terms of recruiting ridership. But I think we need to acknowledge that at some point, relatively soon, we're going to have to make that difficult decision, because like every other entity, our costs are going up. But my view is this FY24 isn't the time to do it. And the fare box recovery, obviously, we're the 50% target is not realistic, probably not realistic anytime soon. So we probably need to monitor that and come up with something that the staff thinks is realistic moving forward, given the twin challenges of the pandemic and new service coming online, which is going to take some time to ramp up.
Mr. Stork, and then Supervisor Lawson.
Appreciate Mr. Walkershaw's points. I would say a couple of things. One is that we need to have not a 2024 budget process, but we need to have a 2024 to 2026 budget process. I think we need to be looking out 3 years and making plans to the projections that we would then be following as a process for the next 2 or 3 years, because I don't think there's any doubt the recovery process is going to take more than a year or two. And the objective in my mind of 3 years is that we have to be where we will be at a sustainable level in 2 or 3 years. Even if we shepherd our money and are careful, we know that we have to be there. And so we need to be looking at the operations and looking at our plans, so that if we're not hitting what we expect to hit in 2024, 2025, we've already, as a board, made some decisions about what we were likely to do. And at least we will be kind of orienting and providing our CEO the kind of guidance that he and his staff would need to be able to make sure that we continue to grow VRE but grow within the constraints of ridership. And ultimately, I think we need to get back to 50% fare box contribution. And in my mind, that has to be a key part of what we do. I recognize it's not going to happen right away, but part of it is increased ridership can make a difference with that. But again, I'm looking at a 3-year budget process, and I think we ought to be, everything we do this year ought to be putting together those next 3 years. Thank you.
Supervisor Lawson?
Supervisor Stork just really hit on a lot of what I was thinking. And I was gonna ask Mark, pre-pandemic, we were at 50%, right?
That's correct. We were,
And had been for several years, or, I mean,
yes, we were budgeting at about 52%, and we would usually come in at the end of the year at about 53 or 4%.
I'm basically just echoing what the supervisor said. Recognizing nobody right now wants to go out and start talking about raising fares.
Right. Mr. Stewart?
I meant to ask, what was, how do we end 2022 in terms of the percentage of fares to budget?
My off-the-cuff answer is about 12 or 13%. I can confirm that.
I just wanted to get a ballpark.
Yes, please.
It's something I should know. So when we were getting that 50% before the pandemic, were the trains full? Is that how, that's how we've been running full trains? And when you add a car to train, because I know from Rich can add cars, does that increase it doesn't increase the cost as much. I mean, the cost of each additional car, goes down, right? It's not, the marginal cost of the additional car is not all that great. So that if you could add more cars and get more ridership, that might somewhat deal with the overall cost issue. So the whole key is ridership, I guess.
Yeah, ridership is absolutely the key. I would say, prior to the pandemic and sort of prior to the TRV program, that was our sort of near to medium term answer, was to lengthen the cars. I'm sorry, lengthen the trains by adding cars, because that is a relatively low cost way to add capacity.
And then if we add trains, which we're talking about doing, that throws in another calculation, but
Of course.
right, it's all about getting people on the trains.
Ms. Bumpkin?
Yeah, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Finance Committee, and Mark, thank you for your great presentation today. We did flush out a lot of issues, and your point, Mr. Stork and Ms. Lawson, we did talk about looking out actually 5 years. And that's what we do with our tax rate and our budget right now in Stafford County, and it's really critical right now. And so I'm going to kind of just sit back and wait and see what our new survey looks like. And, as Mark said, the longer ridership is coming from the southern jurisdictions right now. And, I don't want to say that I want to pay more, but we'll have to see how everything flushes out. And, it's a very fluid situation. Going back to your macro items, we don't know where inflation's going to be. Could be significantly lower based on supply and demand, what we're seeing right now, or it could go the other way. So, we're just really in a very odd, unique, fluid situation, and we're going to have to make decisions with data that we have and looking at past data and future expected data that we'll have at that point in time. So.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think one of the things that would be helpful is in looking at this a little bit longer term approach is maybe some graphics and looking at some scenarios, because I'm like over the next several years, I think the key point in time is going to be whenever we run out of the federal money. And so I would be really interested in seeing with, maybe an assumption, maybe a couple of scenarios on ridership. What does that mean? When do we run out of money from the feds? And then at that point, what is our fare box recovery rate? Given sort of continuity of what we're doing and incorporating plans for new trains and that kind of thing. So, obviously that's going to move a little bit, but, at that point, are we at 20%? Are we at 25%? How far away are we going to be from this 50% goal? And I think that's something we're gonna need to look at as an operation.
Mr. Kelly?
Build on Mr. Alcorn's comments, which I was going to bring up is one of the biggest fears I've had, when we get all this federal money, everybody's been kind of living on it, and then one day it's not going to be there. Are you planning accordingly? So I also agree that we need to look forward in budgeting to the day that money goes away. And I think we do going to have to start looking at our subsidies and cranking them up and things of that nature to come out of this without turning into a train wreck. And while riders, more trains and cars, then we're looking at the issues that we've always had. You got to store the trains. Trains can only be certain size, usually storage, the platforms. There's a lot of issues. It's not just easy to just stick another car on it. There's a lot of expenses that go around that we need to discuss. But I agree that we need to look a little bit longer term than just year to year. It's always driven me nuts at the jurisdictional level because we all go, oh, well, we'll deal with that next year. And right now, I tell you, the city of Fredericksburg is dealing with so many deferred issues that we can't put off anymore. I don't want to see us getting in that situation at all. So we are going to have to bite the bullet. We are going to have to, frankly, as politicians, be able to explain to the public we're doing this because we're looking beyond the next year into years out, and hopefully we can present to the public that if we follow this route, this is what you'll get at the end of it.
I agree. I would really like to see, when we were running out of that federal money, and then like, if we were where we want to be by then, and then work backwards from there, and like, then develop a plan. Like, do we need to do incremental increases on fares or something to make sure we're there? Like, and we can adjust as we go, but I think looking at a plan like that would be very helpful.
Any other, excuse me, comments or discussion? Mr. Phil?
Thank you.
The action items that we need to keep in mind with regards to that,
No.
to his report?
No, ma'am. That was actually very good. This, it will be, just to reiterate the process here. So now we take this input and we will be working up, and you will see in September what would be a draft or preliminary budget where we start sort of putting some of these pieces and stuff together. As far as some of the scenario planning and graphics and stuff like that, great. I mean, yeah, absolutely great ideas. And we might have some of those maybe in September. I think you'll see a pretty raw, preliminary preliminary budget. And we'll just keep working on that, refining that as the fall goes on, and should be able to get you what you need by the time we come in for a formal adoption in December. So.
Yeah, and I'll just say thank you to the Finance Committee for the discussion that took place in June.
Chair, when we do the September, another briefing on our outstanding federal funds. It's been a while since we've really chatted about it. One, two, also understanding, there's deadlines on it still, which are still kind of soft. And also more importantly, too, what we can and cannot spend the funds on. I think there needs to be a good understanding moving forward on what we got left, what we can use it for, and how we look at fitting in.
Madam Chair, Mr. Kelly, absolutely. And actually the timing's perfect because we'll be closing out FY 2022. So we'll have you actually some pretty hard numbers when we come in.
Okay, we do not have a closed session, so we'll go to item 12. Excuse me, operations board member time, and we will start spending authority. Okay, all right, or we'll do the spending authority. I need to.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Do have a spending authority report, 10B. We did the month of June, several task orders and purchase orders in there. If anybody has any questions, I'm prepared to answer them. I'll leave it at that.
Any questions for Mr. Dalton on the spending authority? Pretty standard. Okay, all right, no closed session. So now we will go to item 12, operation board members time, and we will start, let's just start with Ms. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good. Everybody have a great rest of the summer and see you in September.
Scared.
I'm good.
Good, thanks.
That's all.
So I do want to point out that we started some new, which
Virginia and Amtrak started some new trains this past week. Joe was there. Thanks for being on, Andrew. And why this is important to you, one's going to Norfolk and one's going to Roanoke, when we started the Newport News train. Why that's important, we've had some conversations with folks in the Fanpo area about some reverse commute. One of the reverse commute trains was taken away due to the temporary, the last 6 months or so, non-running one of the Newport News trains. So that's put back in place. And also the new Norfolk train will be coming through the Fredericksburg area about 4 p.m. going north, and Woodbridge later or so. So this is also valuable for us to determine what trains we're adding in the future. So we'll get a market from these trains moving forward for the 2026 and 2030 trains that will be coming as part of Transform Around Virginia. As we finish projects, we get more trains. So while we do have some train slot time with CSX, they know we set the train times. We're worried about the train times this year. Things are going to change by 26 and 2030 with travel patterns. So we'll get a lot of data from these, who's getting on the trains, who's using them for reverse commute. And also, we're really excited about, we don't have late night trains yet, but we talked about late night and reverse commute trains. Late night trains will be coming in 2026, both on Amtrak and VRE. We have those slots coming. So just want to remind people about that that came up during the financial discussion, because those might not meet the fare box recovery that the rush hour trains might, but actually during the pandemic, WMATA ridership and other ridership around the country has shown that people, if they're not going to work, they actually might want to get out. So they're stuck at home all day, then they want to go to dinner. Just kind of my way of saying that getting these new trains out there is good, even though it's Amtrak, not VRE. This will help us inform what we plan to do in the future for VRE. Thank you.
So I'll just tag, so I've got a VACO conference in Roanoke and I was dreading the drive. Is there a train? And there is. And it goes at a convenient time. It's gonna work for me and it's the one you just put on. I figured you did it for me, thank you. And I was talking to Supervisor Bonke here and she didn't know about it. So she's thinking she might take it. And I think we'll put it out on the VACO listserv.
Yeah.
I'm just really excited about my train ride. And it's only $26 round trip. It's gotta be subsidized.
No way.
Amtrak's moved to a airline-based ticketing system, whereas the more seats available, the lower the price. As this train gets full, the higher the price will be. So with the new trains being put out there and people not being used to those times, because it doesn't fit the normal travel patterns, there's going to be a lot of seats available. I've been checking ticket prices this morning, and some of them are $15.
Wow. Crazy.
And you're right, the new Roanoke train times are reverse commute times. It leaves DC in the morning at 8 a.m. going south, and in the evening it comes through, I want to say 8 o'clock or so. For those who might, for whatever reason, might want to jump on to Manassas, Culpeper, Manassas, wherever, and if they have an early morning meeting in DC and they want to get in DC, or they want to meet someone out late at night in DC, that's fine too. So yeah, we're excited to see what data will come from these two. Bill, me and Rich have talked about how we look at trains, take the label off them. Are we moving people? Are we moving people at the right time of the day? That would go for bus as well. We want to be our piece of the puzzle. So I'm happy to hear that the second train to Roanoke is.
I am so excited.
Needs of
It's
people.
meeting my needs, and the train station is right across from what conference is. I'm just gonna walk with my roller bag over to the conference, stay for a couple of days and come back. I'm really excited about it. I'll report everybody how it was, so that'd be good.
Well, let me know what train, so I can make sure it's.
I will, I'll take all the notes.
can be in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. For us VACO people, that was the most important piece of information of the day. So
I can't.
you have to look
Think maybe we should have a little party on the train.
on the day.
No, at least.
Reserves, bars.
Yeah, maybe. You might want to think about that. No, that's going a little far. That would not, politicians, it doesn't look good. Yeah, actually, a nice latte in the morning would be
Cafe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wish the train had been running when I went to the VTA conference.
I know.
I know Kenneth got on at like 6 a.m. The one train leaving got off very early that morning. So glad to hear about the additional service. And I was at the Alexandria event as well.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah, that's, I come from Hampton Roads, so I'm excited about the
Okay.
additional, my family's down there. Yeah, the only thing I was gonna add is, I attended another Meet the Management event, and got to learn a little more about the location and design of the Crystal City relocated station. It looks like it's gonna be really cool, honestly, and very pretty, going through their new waterfront park. I also got to speak with some riders, met a woman who is here from Amazon and bringing 20 more employees, and she bought down in the Spotsylvania area so she could ride VRE, and it was like the story you want to hear, right? If you're in this room. So it was a really great event to see the riders and hear about the new station, and I'm glad I was there to participate.
Just one thing, just going back to the budget, because I think it's a really good point about forecasting. Normally, historically, we would do the 6-year financial forecast in each budget. We haven't done that the last couple of years for obvious reasons. And maybe that's another one where it's time to bite the bullet and do it maybe with an asterisk, and that should provide the path and lay out kind of what looking. I don't know that 2 to 3 years is enough to show that we're gonna be where we want to be. So the 6-year might be a better time, something for Mark to look at. And I also I don't think it's been mentioned, but just want to thank everyone for the 30th anniversary celebration and ride that we did at the Manassas station. It was a great event and great day. So thank you to everyone who came, and the chair gave great comments, and we had a good ride to the best VRE station, Burke Center, where we all got off. So look forward to continuing the celebration this afternoon.
We'll all argue with you on that one.
Yeah. Want to just point out a couple of things. First, I want to welcome our new staff members. I'm looking forward to working with you all. So welcome to the VRE team. And then just also want to point out that there is no meeting in August. So our next board meeting will be September 16th. Also just want to reflag the CEO and Legal Counsel Evaluation Committee meeting that will meet today. Hopefully it won't take long so they can participate in our 30th anniversary activities. And then also, as a reminder, we will be celebrating our 30th anniversary. We have some guests coming in, and so hopefully you all can stay for that. We'll break for about 10 minutes or so, get things set up, and then we'll be back out. And then we are located outside area, or right?
I'm sorry.
Where will the reception be
So
specifically?
we'll actually come back. We'll be in here. There's a spot. We'll guide you and stuff when it's time to grab a little bite to eat or whatever. But the CEO, Chief Legal Officer Evaluation Committee, you'll meet in the small room
Oh, down there.
over in the corner. I checked it before. It does have air conditioning.
Will you, announce the members? Is that the same committee to both?
Actually, that's a good question. Is it the same? Yes.
Yeah. As you recall, this is the first year that we have that, so we're just
Right.
combining it. We'll let the committee decide how they want.
Yeah.
And Supervisor Bailey's chair.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, just let everybody know. Thank you. Yeah, same people.
Same people.
Thank you.
Okay. But whoever wants to be part of it, I'm sure that's open. But again, hopefully everyone can also join the festivities as well. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Bailey, is there a second? All in favor? Any opposed? I can't, I'll just fill it out here.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You got a shout out?
I was double checking to see